In 2013, a research team from Harvard Medical School traveled to a cluster of monasteries in the mountains of eastern Tibet. They were not there to study spirituality. They were there because the data kept pointing to the same anomaly. Monks were aging differently from everyone else. Not slightly differently, dramatically differently. The monks they studied ranged in age from 40 to 85. By standard biomarkers, telomere length, inflammatory markers, oxidative stress, many were biologically 10 to 20 years younger than their chronological age. Their energy was described by the researchers as inconsistent with their years. Their minds were sharp. Their bodies were functional, and not one of them could explain why in terms the research team had expected. So the team did what scientists do. They started measuring everything: sleep, diet, movement, stress markers, and above all, cortisol. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what they found. What monks do every morning, step by step, minute by minute, and what each part of that sequence is doing inside your body according to the science that followed. Not as a philosophy to admire, as a week to follow. And stay with me, because there is one thing monks do in the first 90 minutes of the day that almost nobody in the modern world does. According to the research, it is the single most powerful anchor for your energy, your sleep, and your stress hormones that science has ever identified. Get a pen. This one is worth writing down. The Harvard team measured one thing above everything else: cortisol. Cortisol is your body's primary stress and alertness hormone. In a healthy system, it follows a precise curve, rising sharply in the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking, sustaining through the morning, then declining steadily until it reaches its lowest point at night. That curve is called the cortisol awakening response. And it is the biological foundation of everything: your energy, your focus, your sleep quality, your emotional stability, your immune function, and your rate of biological aging. The monks showed cortisol curves that were, in the words of the researchers, near perfect. 40% lower baseline cortisol than age-matched controls outside the monastery. A stronger, cleaner morning peak. A more complete evening decline. Telomere lengths that placed many of them 10 to 20 years younger than their chronological age. Research from the University of California and the Max Planck Institute produced near-identical findings independently. This was not one study. This was a pattern that kept repeating across different research teams, different monasteries, different traditions. The question every researcher eventually asked was the same: what are they doing every morning that everyone else isn't? The answer was not what anyone expected. The monk morning follows a sequence. The sequence is everything. Do not change the order. Step 1. Water. Immediately. Before anything else. Tenzin Norbu drank 2 cups of warm water before he left his sleeping quarters. Every monk in every tradition studied did the same. Here is why this matters. During 8 hours of sleep, the body loses between 400 and 800 milliliters of water through respiration and passive perspiration. Even mild dehydration, as little as 1% of body weight, raises cortisol measurably. A 2018 study in the journal Physiology and Behavior found that dehydrated subjects showed significantly elevated cortisol responses to mild stressors compared to hydrated controls. The monks were not thinking about cortisol. They were following what their teachers had taught them. The outcome was the same: 500 milliliters of water, before the phone, before coffee, before anything. Step 2. No phone, no news, no input, for 60 minutes. This is the step that almost no one in the modern world does, and according to the research, it may be the single highest impact change available to the average person. Here is what happens neurologically when you check your phone within the first minutes of waking. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought, planning, and emotional regulation, is not yet fully online. The amygdala, The Threat Detection Center is. Every notification, headline, and social media post is processed as a potential threat. Cortisol spikes reactively, not cleanly. The HPA axis activates in a fragmented, chaotic pattern rather than the smooth, purposeful arc that produces genuine energy. A 2022 study published in PLOS One tracked 74 adults across 2 weeks. Half continued normal morning phone use. Half waited 60 minutes before checking any device. The delayed group showed significantly lower morning cortisol reactivity, better sustained attention scores, and self-reported mood improvements by day 7. Monks called this silentium, the sacred silence of the morning hours. They didn't know the neuroscience. They knew what worked. Step 3. Morning light. Within 30 minutes of waking. Tenzin walked outside before meditation. Not for exercise, not for fresh air, for the light. Natural light entering the eyes in the first 30 minutes of waking triggers a specific set of retinal cells, intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, that send signals directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the master biological clock in the brain. This single signal anchors the cortisol awakening response at the correct time, sets a precise 14 to 16-hour countdown to melatonin production, and synchronizes every downstream hormonal rhythm the body runs on. Dr. Andrew Huberman at Stanford has described morning light as the most important daily behavior for setting circadian rhythm. On a clear day, outdoor light delivers 10,000 lux or more. Indoor lighting delivers 100 to 500 lux. The difference is not subtle. 5 to 10 minutes. Outside. Eyes toward the sky. Not staring at the sun, simply facing it. No sunglasses. Even on a cloudy day, the outdoor light delivers 10 to 50 times more photons than any indoor light source. Monks walked in morning light for 1,000 years before neuroscience had a word for what they were doing. Step 4. 10 minutes of contemplative practice. Before food. After morning light, Tenzin meditated. 2 hours in his case, but the research on cortisol benefit begins at 10 minutes, not 2 hours. 10. A 2014 meta-analysis in JAMA Internal Medicine reviewed 47 randomized controlled trials of meditation across 3,515 participants. Regular meditation practice produced significant reductions in cortisol, measurable improvements in anxiety, depression and pain, and structural changes in the prefrontal cortex visible on MRI. 10 minutes of slow controlled breathing activates the vagus nerve, the primary pathway of the parasympathetic nervous system. Vagal activation directly counteracts the HPA axis response that drives cortisol elevation. The monks called this aura. Pray and work. They did not separate the physical from the spiritual. Modern neuroscience confirms they were right not to. Box breathing. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. 5 cycles. 10 minutes. The cortisol response to the rest of the day is measurably different after this practice. Step 5. A protein-forward breakfast. Within 60 minutes of waking. Monks ate early and they ate protein first. Barley with butter tea in Tibet, miso soup with tofu in Japan, eggs and legumes in Christian monasteries across Europe. The mechanism is straightforward. Skipping breakfast causes blood sugar to fall. The adrenal glands respond by producing cortisol to raise blood glucose through gluconeogenesis. This creates an unnatural secondary cortisol spike on top of whatever stress the body is already managing. Protein at breakfast specifically matters because amino acids are the precursors to every neurotransmitter the brain runs on: dopamine, serotonin, GABA. A breakfast high in refined carbohydrates spikes insulin rapidly, which then crashes blood sugar and triggers another cortisol release. Protein and fat provide slow, stable glucose delivery that keeps cortisol steady and energy consistent through the morning. 30 grams of protein at breakfast. Eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. Eaten slowly, without screens. Step 6. Coffee. But not yet. Tenzin drank butter tea in the morning, caffeinated but mild, and never in the first hour. The reason to delay caffeine until 90 minutes after waking is specific and supported by research. Cortisol is naturally at its peak in the first 60 to 90 minutes after waking. Introducing caffeine during this window does not add to your alertness. It substitutes for it. Your body downregulates natural cortisol production and increases adenosine receptor sensitivity to compensate. The result is tolerance, dependency, and a harder crash. Wait 90 minutes. Let the cortisol awakening response complete. Then drink your coffee. The same dose will work better, last longer, and leave you less depleted. Miller's 2010 research makes the case clearly. Most people who shift their coffee to 90 minutes after waking report that it feels stronger, not because the coffee changed, but because it is now doing its job instead of competing with a process it was interrupting. Here is the complete Tibetan monk morning sequence, adapted for modern life. The timing is a guide, not a rule. The order is not: wake up, water immediately, 500 milliliters, warm if possible, no phone, no news, no input, 60 minutes minimum, outside within 30 minutes, face the sky, 5 to 10 minutes, no sunglasses, 10 minutes of box breathing or meditation before food, breakfast within 60 minutes, 30 grams of protein minimum, eaten without screens, first coffee at 90 minutes, not before. Total additional time required compared to a normal morning, approximately 0. This is a resequencing, not an addition. Everything you already do, just in a different order. Here is what the research says honestly about what to expect. In the first 3 days, the phone-free morning will feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is the cortisol spike you have been feeding every morning finally not getting what it was trained to expect. That is not a problem. That is the recalibration beginning. By day 7, most people report a noticeable difference in morning energy. The cortisol awakening response is beginning to anchor cleanly. The baseline reactivity to daily stresses starts to ease. By day 14, the sequence starts to feel automatic. The morning no longer requires willpower. It simply happens. By day 21, which is the full length of the monk method protocol, the curve has measurably shifted. You are waking up more naturally, falling asleep more easily, running on cortisol the way it was designed to work, as clean energy rather than stress response. The monks did not go through an adjustment period. They grew up inside the sequence, but the research confirms the biology responds at the same speed regardless of how you arrive at the practice. The monks did not follow a wellness protocol. They followed a morning. The same morning their teacher had followed, and their teacher's teacher before that. The science that explains why it worked came 900 years later. The results were the same either way. If you want the complete system, all 7 pillars of monastic practice, the full 21-day daily protocol, the supplement guide, the meal timing framework, and the evening ritual that completes what the morning begins, that is what the monk method was built to give you. The link is in the description. 21 days, ancient principles, a morning that actually works. And one action before you close this video. Tomorrow morning, put your phone face down for the first 60 minutes. Just that. Nothing else. See what happens.